In 2015, mass migration plunged Hungary into chaos. The result? A political backlash still reverberating around Hungary and Europe today.
Viktor Orban is, next to Mr. Macron, Mrs. Merkel, I think the most influential politician in Europe. He is perfecting a kind of new style of politics, single-party rule.
Hungary is still very far away from Russia, Azerbaijan, or Turkey in this respect, but it's inching towards that place.
If you want a symbol that captures the power and the simplicity of Viktor Orban's nationalist message, then this is it. 170 kilometers of fortified border fence. Hungary's way of saying no way to immigration.
The ever-growing gap between the leftist, liberal political elite in Western Europe and the electorates in the member states has to be closed. If it's growing further, then it's going to ruin the European Union.
Hungary, a small country at the heart of Europe, intensely proud of its history, culture, and language. The Magyar story can be traced back more than 1,000 years. Now it has a new central character, Viktor Orban, Hungary's populist prime minister, whose hostility to immigration has fueled the rise of a rebooted nationalism. This pocket of rural Hungary feels a very long way away from metropolitan Budapest. The communities here are small, rural, and deeply traditional. And it was here, back in 2015, that thousands of migrants poured into Hungary. And you can imagine the impact that had on the national psyche. In the summer of 2015, thousands crossed into southern Hungary from Serbia every day. Syrians, Iranians, Iraqis, Afghans, people drawn to the safety and prosperity of Europe, in particular Germany. Hungary was the unwilling way station. 3.5 years later, an impenetrable border barrier divides Hungary from Serbia. 170 kilometers of electrified barbed wire to keep Hungary migrant-free.
My house is the first house in the European Union, so I have a lot of experience with this mass immigration.
Laszlo Taroksky is mayor of the village next to the new fence. His house overlooks it. He's an extreme Hungarian nationalist whose far-right views have become strikingly prominent.
We couldn't sleep by night because the migrants arrive, especially by night. They thought that my fence is the border fence, but there was no fence on the border at that time.
Yeah, but do you really want Hungary to be a country of fortified electric fences and high borders and barbed wire? Is that your vision for Hungary?
This is not a good situation, but we couldn't do anything else. We had to protect our country. How I would protect my farm, my house. This is the same for me. And don't forget, this mass immigration was a crime.
But, Mr. Mayor, isn't the truth that your concern about immigration isn't just about security? There is an element of racism in your attitude to immigrants. For example, in your own town, you have declared that you want to ban the burqa, you want to ban the building of mosques. You are making it plain that for you this is about culture. It isn't just about security.
Yes, you're right, because I think we need to defend our culture. You know, I respect, for example, the Islam in Saudi Arabia, but Hungary is a Christian country. Our traditions are Christian traditions. The European Union is not working now. The European Union cannot preserve the European culture. They will destroy, and there will be just not diversity, there will be a uniformist society, you know, without colors, without the European colors. Who will defend the European people, the European nations?
Hungary now allows just 2 would-be asylum seekers to enter the country from Serbia per day. They're held in one of 2 secure detention camps right next to the border fence. The overwhelming majority of applications for refugee status are summarily rejected. The Hungarian government's determination to keep this transit zone off limits goes far beyond just journalists. The UN sent a panel of experts to find out what was going on beyond this fence late last year. The government wouldn't let them in. Very few Muslim migrants were allowed to settle in Hungary during the 2015 crisis. This pastry shop is owned by one who was, Fredun Rahaiban. But Prime Minister Orban insists Hungary is a Christian country. Muslims, he says, create parallel societies. They are not welcome.
وقتی در بسته باشه من چه توصیه میتونم بکنم؟ این سیاست دولته. دیگه این حتما این واسه خودش برنامه‌ای داره. سیستمی داره. هر کشوری واسه خودش یه سیستم قانونی داره. از نظر اقتصادی، از نظر اجتماعی، سیاسی. الان دیگه ایشون رئیس جمهور اینجاست. ایشون تصمیم میگیره که در باز بشه یا در بسته بشه.
In today's Hungary, human rights workers offering assistance to migrants are seen as the enemy within.
And now, the only place where asylum seekers are in Hungary is the border transit zone, a detention center. So we still know what's going on. We're still able to help them. Just a week ago, something happened that I think was outrageous. A family of 5, mother, father, 3 small kids, are detained in the transit zone. They're from Iraq. Their asylum claim has been rejected, but they're still detained there until the authorities can do something with them to remove them from Hungary. And the parents, because of the loss of an asylum seeker status, they were no longer given food. Children were receiving food, but not the parents.
So the parents are effectively being starved.
Exactly. This went on for 6.5 days, and it was only because they had lawyers who turned to the European Court of Human Rights to ask that court to give an emergency order so that the Hungarian government would be compelled to start giving food.
Do you fear right now for the future of Hungarian democracy?
Absolutely. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, and many other people are doing what they're doing when they're protesting, when they're organizing civil society organizations, when they turn to us with ideas, when they actually give us support, both moral and financial. It is because of the concern and the very, very heartfelt and very serious concern.
And if it ends up, this fight of yours, if it ends up with you facing criminal charges, a possible prison sentence,
I think that is not very realistic in Hungary today. Hungary is still very far away from Russia, Azerbaijan, or Turkey in this respect, but it's inching towards that place.
Viktor Orban first rose to power as an anti-communist champion of freedom. But these days his foe is international liberalism, specifically George Soros, the billionaire American financier of Hungarian Jewish origin who has spent $500 million supporting liberal and progressive causes in Hungary. Today, Soros's face is everywhere, currently pictured alongside EU Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker. This government ad claims that together they're threatening Hungary's security by encouraging immigration. Soros has become Mr. Orban's go-to target. The university he founded in Budapest in 1991 has been hounded, and it's now moving its main campus to Vienna. This is the last class of students who will get US-certified CEU degrees in Budapest. Because this is a private university, and ultimately it is financed by the billionaire George Soros. Are you comfortable with that? Because the Hungarian government tells all of Hungary's citizens that Soros is a great danger to this country.
I think Soros has created opportunity for many fellow Hungarians, including government officials. I've been thinking about this a lot, like why am I different to any of those other fellow Hungarian students studying in a master's program? And I couldn't find an answer. I can speak on behalf of all of the students. Our main goal here is not to, become a Soros agent or be part of any political movement, idea, theory, whatever.
Are you feeling angry right now?
I am angry. I've been angry, but I think anger was changed to this feeling of insecurity for a long time now. Which is kind of devastating.
Stephen, we'd like to stay in Budapest forever, and we will maintain a presence in Budapest. Depends what the law allows, but we're going to be forced to move our degree programs to Vienna in September because we're not allowed to offer them in Budapest here. So we'll be split in two. We'll be bringing back the Austro-Hungarian Empire. There'll be Vienna and Budapest. It's tragic in my view because our home is here, but that's what the Orban government's decided.
But you see, the government says you're crying wolf, that the Central European University can remain here, that you can still offer degree programs here, and frankly, you are making a political point for your own purposes, but you're not telling the truth about what's happening.
Oh, I don't take lessons in the truth from the Orban government, frankly. They passed legislation in 2017 that said, you can't stay here unless you make a deal with us. We then negotiated a deal with them, and then they refused to sign it. Once they refused to sign it, we're not allowed to issue US accredited degrees in Budapest. Those are facts. I didn't make them up.
You're free to sit here and discuss with me just how, in your view, how wrong-headed the Orban government is. Other universities, indeed other American universities, can still operate in Budapest and issue their American degrees. I come back to the point that in the end, it seems to me a lot of this is about Mr. Soros' problem with Viktor Orban, and we can discuss that, but that's rather different than a wholesale attack on liberty.
Well, that would be true again if there weren't this 8-year, 9-year pattern of essentially this is a regime that is hostile to any free institution. Yes, I can speak to you freely, and I've taken advantage of it. This is a free society. I've never denied that. But it's consolidating a new form of single-party rule within a European state. They're trying something new here, which is to create a single-party regime that holds power indefinitely, extracts resources from the society, fills all institutions with its own people, and basically steadily reduces the frame of freedom here. This is something new. This is a 21st century phenomenon that I think we need to understand.
Orban's contention is that Soros has fundamentally changed. From being that man who simply wanted to encourage freedom in East and Central Europe, he's become a man who is determined to shape the nations of Central and Eastern Europe in his own liberal image, if you like.
Yeah, but the whole thing is a kind of fantastic conspiracy theory. You know, change inside Hungarian society will happen because Hungarians want it to happen. This regime needs George Soros in order to run a campaign to mobilize its base. It's the politics of enemies. It bears George Soros' capacity to change, inflect, move Hungary is just about zero. The person who has a very large capacity to change, move Hungary for good or ill is Viktor Orban.
Prime Minister Orban comes from the village of Feldsút, a short drive from Budapest. It's home to 1,800 people. It is perhaps the most pampered community in all of Hungary. It has its own railway line, all of 6 kilometres long, to the village next door. There are so few passengers, it shuts down for the winter. Being in Mr. Orban's home village is a surreal experience, which tells you a lot about his penchant for crony capitalism. There's this railway to nowhere built with €2 million of EU funds, and just down the track there's a swanky new football stadium built on Mr. Orban's land with massive tax breaks. And then there's his oldest, closest friend, the former mayor of the village, who just happens to be Hungary's richest oligarch. Viktor Orban famously loves football, so he had this €10 million stadium built right next to his house. Down the road is a state-of-the-art sports centre. This village tells you plenty about how power works in Orban's Hungary. What do you think of your Prime Minister, Mr. Orban? Do you like him?
Remek ember. Nagyon, a fő épület az a nagy kupolás. Minden gyönyörűen el van rendezve, minden nagyon szép, gyönyörű. Őnekik köszönhető, meg a vezetőknek, akik remek munkát végeznek. Úgyhogy a falu gyöngyszeme, gyönyörű szép épület. Büszke vagyok, hogy a felcsúti lakos vagyok.
Hungary is firmly in Viktor Orban's grip. Now he's looking to a bigger canvas. With European elections looming, he's working with like-minded leaders in Italy, Poland and beyond. Could anti-immigrant, illiberal populism become Europe's dominant political movement?
It's very sad to see the political left utilizing the European institutions for its political goals. And I think that's the first thing that stands out. I mean, in the European Union, if you have a disagreement over things, namely whether the country's measures, laws and practices are in line or not in line with what the European Union expects, there is one way to settle that, and that is a legal debate.
Is it not the truth that at the heart of your government's worldview is a conspiracy theory that George Soros, an American financier who of course has Hungarian roots, is in essence trying to destroy and undermine Hungary by use of migration and the lure of migrants into your country? It is nonsense, but it is an idea that you have peddled for the last 3 years and more.
In face of what you're trying to suggest, there is hard reality underground, and that is Mr. Soros has invented himself as a political actor a couple of decades ago, without saying. That was the intention. If you take a look at his manifestos, the work of the Open Society Institute, take a look at his projectsyndicate.org website, which is the primary way of announcing plans and ideas about, or his visions about Europe, you're going to see that there's no need for any kind of conspiracy theory, because that penetration of member states' policies, European policies, is being done by Mr. Soros and his organizations for the past couple of years and decades. It's important to point out actually that indeed Mr. Soros's framework or network of institutions is something which is executing and exercises lots of power without ever being elected and without the mandate coming from the people.
Sorry, you're saying that civil society organizations that advocate for human rights...
NGOs in our eyes, especially belonging to Mr. Soros, has nothing to do with civil society.
I'm struggling to understand you here. The Helsinki Committee, for example, I've just been to visit there. Marta Padavi, who is a Hungarian citizen, she is committed to human rights. She works very hard for human rights in many different fields, including the rights of migrants. And she says that her work is being hampered, her organization is being harassed by your government.
Civil society is grassroots. We have 65,000 civil organizations in this country.
What about the Helsinki Committee?
We have a debate with a couple of dozens of them, though, which have nothing to do with grassrootsness, and that is they are not coming from the will of the people.
Late last year, you refused to let a UN panel of experts into your so-called transit zones.
Because they haven't announced their visit in time.
So you're acknowledging it is true?
Pardon me?
You're acknowledging now it is true.
Yeah,
You
but
would not let them in.
you're trying to portray something as is institutionalized, but we are working together with all international organizations as required by international law, and especially coming back to this citation, Marta Pardavi is in no way a court, in no way an authority who decides whether we violate. She can have an opinion that we violate. If she wants, she goes to court, and the court is going to decide.
She does go to court.
Let me point out.
Last week she went. Her lawyers working with her went to court because your transit zone was actually violating the law by refusing food to two Iraqis who were there with their children and were denied food by the people running one of the transit zones.
Going to court doesn't mean that they are right. It's a court decision that is going to declare to you who is right and who is wrong. The thing is here that we have a case here, though, and that is there are established laws for the country by the constitution and legislation of parliament. There's international law which has never suggested that migration is a human right.
I wonder if it grieves you to see that a respected university, respected around the world, certainly in Europe, the Central European University has had to close down in this city and move to Vienna.
Again, you have to be very
government's refusal.
You have to be very clear with the formulation of your questions. Take a 5 minutes walk down the street, and you're going to find Central European University operating in the heart of Budapest.
Yes, but their headquarters and the bulk of their operations are now going to be in Vienna. You can deny it if you like, it's simply true.
An element of their activity moved, which is not in line with Hungarian law. How is it that other universities...
Mr. Kovacs, does the truth matter to you?
The university is still down the street.
Does the truth matter to you?
Okay,
I just said the bulk of its operations have been moved to Vienna. I'm asking you if the truth matters to you.
Take a 5-minute walk. Central European University is still here.
I'm happy to take a 5-minute walk, and I invite you to come with me. And you will see that the headquarters of the Central European University has been moved to Vienna. Michael Ignatieff, a respected Canadian politician turned director of the university, calls it a tragedy not just for Hungary but for Europe.
Well, we can have an argument about the use of words, but Mr. Ignatieff called himself a failed liberal politician in Canada by his own words.
What's that got to do with anything?
Just because your question announced him as a very respected politician. I believe in Canada.
You can be respected even if you don't win power.
Sure, that's right, okay.
See, it seems to me you just repeatedly make personal attacks, whether it be on Ignatieff, whether it be on Soros, to hide your own cynical agenda.
There's no cynical agenda. There's one line we keep ourselves to, and that is law is there for all.
I just want you to tell me whether your vision is of an illiberal state and a vision which you believe applies beyond Hungary's borders to Europe generally.
Our vision is a perception which is not liberal by the political sense of the word. And that is, the value system, which belongs to Christian Democrats, according to our Christian democratic values, is on the same footing as I suggested with liberal values. We make preferences. We make preferences in family. We make preferences if it's about institutions, the work of institutions, if it's about the community and the individual, according to our own perception, that is political perception. And it's simply a lie and the misconception that there's only one interpretation of the globe, and that is liberal. In that sense, yes, we are going for a liberal perception of the European Union, which is a lot closer, as a matter of fact, to the original sense of the founding fathers dating back to the 50s and 60s. We see that for the past 3 years, especially since the migration crisis, there is a turn, and that is the ever-growing gap between the leftist, liberal political elite in Western Europe and the electorates in the member states has to be closed. If it's growing further, then it's going to ruin the European Union. If you don't listen to the people's voice, which are clearly different from what the political elite is trying to suggest, that's going to end in disaster.
It's 3 decades since Hungary was freed from the darkness of the Soviet Empire. Back then, Viktor Orban opposed authoritarianism and championed freedom. How the political currents have shifted in 30 years.